All right, perfect. If you have any questions during today's session, please pop them into the chat if you like, and we'll do our best to answer those as we go along. Also, we are putting a handout that you can download from the chat to follow along for today's presentation. And I'll resend that in just a moment to everyone else who's just joining us. All right, I'd like to now introduce our trainer for today. It is a great pleasure to welcome Jolyn Reen. Jolyn stands out as a Microsoft Master Instructor, having over 30 years of experience. Thank you for joining us, Jolyn. Please take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Haley. So welcome everybody to our session today on using Microsoft 365 Forms. So when it comes to Microsoft, of course, we have universal features with our 365 that we can actually use. So when you go into a form, you're going to see some similarities from your other apps. But forms are just like you might think. If you are ever filling out an online application, you're doing a tax form online, whatever the case might be, you're filling out a form at a healthcare facility, you are doing the same thing that we can be creating and using directly within Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft Forms has different ways and different places that we can go to create the forms. Once the form is created, we distribute it depending on where it needs to be accessed from. We can email it, we could embed it, we could embed it into a website. We could just copy and paste a link to the form and have it be placed anywhere. We can have the form be on a SharePoint website. There's a lot of different ways people can access a form. Once they submit their responses to the form, we can actually have real-time results, and we have the ability of downloading that all into Excel for further analysis. We can even share the results of the form, what people had answered. We can share that with others. It is completely integrated into multiple apps within your 365. So your handout on the first page does talk about, some advantages of using a Microsoft form. One huge advantage, as opposed to buying a different application, is this is already a part of your Microsoft 365. So with your licensing, you get forms for free. So you already have the capability of using it. You don't have to pay extra to get it. And because of the fact that it is Microsoft, you get that user-friendly interface that we all want. We all want to be able to have a familiar way of being able to use one application over another application. That integration with your 365 apps is 100% a reason to be using the Microsoft Forms. As you'll see here today, we also have a variety of different question types that we can be using in the forms. And the forms have actually been updated recently. Like other apps in Microsoft, they continuously want to improve the program. So they've actually created new sections and looping that we can actually be doing with the questions as well. We won't get into every advanced feature today, but I want to give you a good overview as to how do you create the forms, how do you submit the forms, how do people get to those forms, how do they fill them out, how do we analyze the results. So we want to make sure you have a good understanding as to how all that works today. So when it comes to kind of the creation, where do you go to create a form? Well, that actually can be done in multiple places. We have the ability of using directly into a Forms apps, which is part of your Microsoft account. We can use it through other applications like OneNote, Outlook, SharePoint, Teams. I have a list on pages 2 and 3 of your handout talking about different places that you can actually go to actually use a form. I won't demonstrate every single one of those today. I could actually spend all day talking about Microsoft Forms with you and different things that you could use it for, but we'll kind of limit just a few different examples of most commonly used ways. But I'm going to actually start right in the Microsoft app. So if you are in your Microsoft account, which let me get that on my screen so you can see this. So when you log into your Microsoft account online, it's just like opening up any app. You can go to your apps launcher at the top left. You can then just open Forms from there. So the Forms icon has the F. So when you come into the Microsoft Forms, you will be able to create new forms, new quizzes, or you can access recently created or used forms as well. Forms can be shared with other people, so there is a filter list at the top where you can have shared with me. But I'm just on recent right now, and you're going to see a tile for every form that I've recently been in. On the bottom, you're going to see the name of the form, whether it was a quiz. I have an untitled quiz here. And you can see if there were any responses to that actual form. So you could see this one only has one response, this one has two, three, etc. Just to give you an idea as to what you'll see when you're looking at this. I'll talk about going into an existing form, but I do want to start with how do you create it? Because I want you to be comfortable with the different question options that we do have available. So at the top, if you want to see just the forms that you have created, all the forms, you can go to My Forms. These forms will give you a list of every form that you have available. So recent is just the most recent ones. This one's going to show you all of the forms. We can also see filled forms. We can go into shared with me, or a form can actually be saved as a favorite. If it's saved as a favorite, if we mark it as being a favorite, we can have those be easily accessible through that favorites category. But I'm usually, as I'm working on forms, I'm usually in recent. This is usually where I go. So you'll probably be spending quite a bit of time on this Forms app. We don't always go directly to a program to manage the form. A lot of times I do it right here. So there isn't a whole lot to this window as far as features are concerned. But up at the top, you can see that I have new form or new quiz. I'm going to start out with a new form. So if you have a form in mind, which by the way, my recommendation is not as much so now, but because when the program was first released, it wasn't as user friendly as it is today. Now we can move things around very quickly and very easily when we create a form, but you still want to plan ahead. Really kind of be thinking about, what is the name of this form? What do I need for a description? So people actually have an idea as to what they're supposed to do with the form. We'll get into a little bit of etiquette here in a minute as well. But just so you kind of plan ahead, I want these questions asked and I want them to be this type of an answer. It's going to be a choice. It's going to be a Likert scale. It's going to be a drop down list. I want it to be a text field where they're just going to physically type. I want these fields to be required. So yes, we can actually say these fields are required for them to answer. So they can't submit the form until they fill out the required fields. Just so you know, it's important that you do that. Now we'll get into a little bit of etiquette, like I said, but just so you're aware. If you happen to have Copilot, you would be prompted right away on the screen. So just so you're seeing what am I in right now, at the top, you're going to see where it says untitled form. That is where you're going to go to name the form. So depending on what type of form it is that you're creating, you want to give it a name first so that it's automatically going to be saved with that name. As an example, I'm going to do a purchase order. I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to click this untitled and I'm going to name this. So I'm going to go into this untitled form here. Come on. And I'm going to name this purchase. Come on. It's not catching up with me. I'll just leave that for right at the moment. I'll wait till that wants me to go in there. But anyway, once you have it named, you'll of course have that name to be able to go back to it. But if you have Copilot, you will be prompted to draft your form with Copilot if you want to. I will show you an example of that because I think it's absolutely a wonderful feature and I do use it. But since I know some of you may not have Copilot, I'm not going to start with it. So if you see it, you don't want to use it, you can just click the X to close it and it will take you to where you need to start creating the form yourself. So it even tells you, let's get started. What's your form about? So it has you click in that top part to put in the title of the form. So I'm going to call this purchase order form. Oops, I have to spell it correctly. So purchase order form. Now you don't have to always have the word form in there. I do it a lot just because I know it's a form then, but it doesn't have to say form. Also at the top right, just so you know, you can add an image. I'll add one so you can see how this piece of it works, because you'll probably want to do this, whether it's going to be your company logo or whatever. It opens, so this image icon with the mountains and the sun, it automatically will open to do an image search. You can go to your OneDrive or you can upload it from your computer. So I'm just going to do an upload. Come on. Or I could search the internet for an image. I'm being patient, trying to. Maybe I should just do a search. That might have been easier. Sorry. But just so you could see, I'll go into a folder here. I should have had this easier to get to here, but let me just kind of show you how I might do this personally myself. I might go into marketing. I might go into logos. I'm just going to grab something out of my logos. I'll grab this and I'll say open, just so you can kind of see how you could add something in. So have an image ready to go. Otherwise, if you want to search on the internet for something, you most certainly can. It seems a little sluggish right at this moment. I apologize for that, but it will eventually show up. And what you want to do then is put in a description. So under the title at the top, you can add in a description of what your form is to let people know. Okay. So where it says a good subtitle is like a trailer, it's a good chance to let your audience know what the form is about and get better responses. So let me close this. I'm going to go back. Okay, it's still updating here, just so you know. But you can always come back and change these just by clicking back into the header area or the subtitle area. You can always come back and change these when you're editing. So just so you could see it added that logo at the top. If I wanted to put in a description, I would come in and I would put in my description. But down at the bottom is where you're going to start creating your questions. So when you think about, you know, what exactly it is that you're going to be putting together, what type of a form, that's where you want to do a little pre-planning. Kind of think about it ahead of time. So once you go to create it, it's going to be easier because we basically want to start from the top and go down. So if I wanted to draft my questions with Copilot, I have that capability if I needed to, but I'm just going to click create first question. And when I first got started, before I realized what my choices were, I did a screenshot of this. And every time I go to create a new form, I actually use Excel to say, this is going to be the question I want to ask. This is the type of question it's going to be. So if it's going to be a choice or if it's going to be a ranking, a Likert scale, whatever, I'm going to put in what are my options for that. Do I want it to be good, bad, you know, best, you know, whatever it is that I want for those? If it's going to be a drop down, whatever, what do I want for those? So I'm planning everything out. And I want to plan sections. So if I'm going to do a purchase order, I might want to actually start with a section. So just to show you how those work, I'm going to actually click section first before I even add any questions. it will ask me to put in the title of the section. So if I'm going to create a purchase order, I might want to separate this information is about the vendor. This is the ship to information, etc. Excuse me. I'm going to name this vendor. So this is going to be a section with all my vendor information. Excuse me. And I'm going to click add new question. So here I'm going to come in and choose what type of a question I want. So maybe I want to know the vendor's company name. I'm going to click text. I'm going to type in what my question is. So they would be entering in their company name. And down at the bottom, I could say long answer because it's text. I could say, you know, if they're going to be putting in a comment or a description, we might want it to be multiple lines of text. Otherwise, I can also say that it's required. And I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to say it's required. Notice on the right-hand side, I could also add an image. I could add an image. Even at the top of this little section where the question is coming in, I could copy the question. So if I'm going to have a question that's similar, I could copy it instead of recreating it. Or if I change my mind and I don't need it, I could do delete. Notice these arrows on the right. These arrows allow us to move the questions up and down. So if I have a question that I added, but I want to move it down a couple, I use those arrows to rearrange things. So great to have that. But then you're just going to continue adding in your other questions. So if I go to add another question, maybe I want a date. So I'll just give you a few examples. And I want them to enter the order date or whatever the case might be. I'm going to make that required. So I'm going to leave that slid over as required. I'm going to add in another question. And let's say that this time I want a Likert scale. When it's a Likert scale, we could be asking things like, you know, please rate the shipping that you received in your last product. So I could say, please rate the shipping in from your last order. Just to give you an idea of some different choices of your questions. So I could go to each of the options. So option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, and put in what I want that to be. So I could say fair, or I could say poor. I would probably do poor. I've been through survey training. I should remember how these work. But I could do poor, I could do fair, I could do good, I could do better. Just as an example, oops, not beater, better, can't spell. And I'll say best, just as an example. Then you want to put in what your statements are, and you can add as many statements as you're going to need. So if one of the questions was, did your products arrive on time? I won't go through a lot of these, but we can ask these types of questions. Was anything damaged? You know, that type of thing. We could go through and keep adding in based on whatever you want for your Likert scale. You could make this required or not have it be required. Once again, that's totally up to you. You'll just continue to add in different questions as you go. But when you go to that add questions, if you wanted to do another section, go back to add question, click section, and it will automatically start a new section. So maybe I want to add in shipping information. Once again, I have to spell that correctly. And then I would add in the questions that I want for that shipping information. So once again, and I'm going to just add a couple of different ones just so you can see how you can actually add these others in. I'm going to do an options one. Do you want the items, or how do you want the items shipped? So let me change that. How do you want the items shipped? So I could come in and put in what my option 1 is, and maybe it's going to be overnight. Come on. I'm waiting for it to catch up to me. But as you can see, okay, good. Now it's catching up. Sorry. So maybe I want it to be overnight. Maybe I want it to be 2-day. I could keep adding other options. Maybe I want it to be slowest possible. Whatever it is that you want to put in for your answers. Once again, you can always delete something. You could add something new in. You could just simply go back and edit whatever you had put in as well. So if I decide instead of slow as possible, maybe I just want to say standard shipping. So just so you could see, you could do that. Now, depending on what it is, do you want them to be able to just answer one of those options, or do you want them to be able to make a multiple choice? Check all that apply. You could actually choose multiple answers. Once again, you can make it required. So you want to come in and you want to build the questions, put in your sections, etc., so that you have everything ready for them to fill out. So once you're done with all of that, just so you're aware, if you look at the menu at the top, so we have the very top menu where it says forms, it says the name of the form, which is purchase order form. Then the second row, I'm currently on questions. I'll get to responses here in just a second, but right now I'm on questions. Over on the right-hand side, we have a preview. We have styles, and I can go into collect responses, so I can submit and then choose how I want to collect the responses, or I could do a presentation of it. But before I do any of that, I'm going to actually go to the menu at the top right. So the ... at the top right gives you a drop-down menu. I would recommend doing this before you send it out. Go into the settings. You should be going into the settings, because this is where you can choose what's going to happen or not happen with the form before you share it with others. So who can fill out this form? Anybody can respond, or only the people within your organization can respond? Do you want to record their name? Just specific people within your organization. So you want to make sure that you choose exactly which option you want. The first one, anyone can respond. Anonymous response does not require them to sign in at all. So that would be helpful if you're going to do an evaluation where you want it to remain anonymous. But I'm going to actually choose the one for my organization, and I want it to automatically record their name coming from their domain. It will automatically grab their name. And then you can options for responses. You can accept responses. You can have a start date and a finish date for when they can fill this out. So they can't start entering in forms until this date, but then it closes on this date. So if you're going to have a time frame of when they can do this, when they can register for the blood drive or whatever you're doing, put a start date and an end date to that. That is actually a very important section to this. So coming into these settings before you give the form to anybody is highly recommended. You can see that you could shuffle, you can have a duration, you could shuffle the questions so they're not going to show up in the same order every time. I do that if I'm doing a quiz sometimes. If I'm going to quiz somebody on a training they just did on fire extinguishers or, building safety or whatever, I could shuffle the questions around. They don't have to stay in the same order each time they take it. I can disable questions for a number of recipients, show a progress bar of how many questions have they completed to go across so they know how many more they have. You see that a lot if you're filling out a evaluation on a product and stuff that you just did, or you're filling out an evaluation on service that you just received. You'll see progress bars quite a bit. Also, the response recipient, allow recipients to respond after they submitted so they could go back and actually change their answers or submit again. I'm going to leave all the rest of those. Actually, I didn't even change anything, so I'm not even going to make any changes or need to save anything, but just so you could see, these would be your options under settings. I'm just going to click off that, and I want to go and view this. I'm going to preview at the top right. Preview is going to allow you to see what the form is actively going to look like right now, if we submit it, if we give this to people to fill out, this is what it's going to look like. But notice at the top right, you have computer and mobile. Will some people actually be filling this out on their phone? I've done that quite often, actually. If I click mobile, it will show me what it will look like for them on a mobile device. But if I go back to computer, this is what it looks like on a computer screen. When you're done previewing it, if you have other changes that you want to be making to it, or you're ready to submit it, etc., go to the top left, click the back arrow. The back arrow will take you back into the form where you can get things finished up and send it out. So back to the top right of the screen, if you want to change the style of the form itself, some of these are a little bit too much for me, but you could click style. Style takes you into a pane on the right-hand side. It's got the default, or you could change the background image using any of these options. And by the way, you can click on it to see what it would look like. So if you wanted to use any of these built-in styles, they're like little template kind of looking things. You could use these if you find one that's appropriate for your form. You know, keep things appropriate for who's going to be filling them out. Down at the bottom, you could change the background color. So we do have different colors that you could be using as well. There's also a plus sign that you could go in and do custom themes as well. I'm not going to worry so much about that today, but just so you're aware of that. I'm going to actually just put it back to the default. I really like the default. There's nothing wrong with it, but if you wanted to have a different theme, you most certainly could. I'm just going to close that pane on the right-hand side by clicking on the X. And then there's a couple of different ways that you can actually submit the form. So if you want others to be filling the form out because you're ready to go with the form now, you can submit it a couple of different ways. Let me show you. So one way is to go to the top right and click collect responses. When you select that collect responses, you can then be choosing anyone can respond to that type of thing that we had in the settings. But on the right-hand side, you could actually copy a link. So if you're just going to put it in an email and, you know, write out an email and give them a link to fill it out, this would be a, you know, or you're going to put it out on OneNote. You're going to put it in the post of a channel of a team, anything like that. You could just copy and paste it wherever you need it to go. But if you wanted to email it directly from here, you could stay on this icon. So there's 3 icons here, by the way. This is the invitation icon where you could fill out an email. Just so you know, I also use the web. I use it on a SharePoint site. Well, there's a couple of different ways I can get it on SharePoint. But on my website, my company website, I could use this embed, and then I could just embed the form directly on my website as well. So lots of ways to distribute your form. I think this is even easier than Adobe Forms, to be honest, because I do Adobe Forms too. But anyway, I'm just going to email it to everybody. So up at the top, I can choose who do I want to send this to. I'm going to send it to myself, just so that you'll be able to see that. I'll send it to my student 1. So I'm just starting to type their names. I'm going to send it to a Gmail account, just so you could see. But down at the bottom, it automatically has an email attached to this. But of course, you can change it. Some of the etiquette is let them know the reason they're receiving this. You know, why are they being asked to fill this form out? Please fill out this form, blah, blah, blah. Give them a deadline. If you leave it open-ended, they're not going to do it right away. Make sure that you tell them we need all forms submitted by Friday at 5 o'clock or whatever your deadline is going to be. And of course, set up that deadline. You know, registration starts today at 4 o'clock. Under those settings, have it be open at 4 o'clock today. Have it be closed on Monday at 8 o'clock. Whatever your time frame is going to be, we can actually set that up. But rewrite this And notice if you do have Copilot, you can actually have Copilot help you rewrite this as well. So if I wanted to use this, I could go ahead and keep it like this and just click send. So I'll go ahead and do that just so you could see what's going to happen with this. Oops. Oh, I have to tell you why I have to remove this. I have to remove external people that aren't in my domain because on the left-hand side, I didn't say anyone can respond. So I'm limiting it just to the people within my organization. So I can't enter an email address of somebody outside my company. So, but it warned me of that. So that's nice. But I'm just going to go ahead and click send. So this would be one way to submit the form for people to fill out. What's going to happen then is they will be receiving a notification. And I'm going to show you my Gmail. So if the Gmail actually receives a message for a form to fill out, let me give you two different examples. So one I did as a link, one I emailed for anybody to be filling out. So here's what it's going to look like. This happened to be a poll I did through Outlook. And it even says in the title of this, it says poll, would you rather attend AM or PM session? So I just did a quick poll through Outlook and I sent it to my Gmail. You can see that it gives them the option to view and vote in the browser. So if they click on that, it's automatically going to take them to an internet browser where they will have access to the form and they can then vote based on whatever question it is that was asked. So I'm going to vote PM. It automatically is going to send back to my email address because I created it. I'm going to click vote. So it automatically shows 2 people responded AM, 1 person responded PM. So if you do a poll, which I'll show you where that's located at in Outlook, this is the response for a poll. But I'm going to click the back arrow. I could respond again if I wanted to, but let me actually jump back into this email. This is my Gmail account. I also received a form via email, and this is what it looks like. Please update your emergency contact information on this form. This was actually a link that I gave them. I typed out my own email. I didn't do it through the program, but just so you could see different options. They would then click on this link. It's going to automatically open the form. They can fill it out and they click submit when they're done. So it's pretty easy for them to be able to fill these out. It's just a link that they click on. So you can see this is an emergency contact form. By the way, I actually had Copilot generate this for me. And I didn't make any changes to it. I just left it, but Copilot created this for me, just so you know. So I could come in and I could do my ratings. I could do my Likert scale. I can put in all of my information, whatever it's asking me. When I'm done, I just simply click submit. So just so you could see how they're going to actually do the form. But let me go to my Outlook. So back into my Outlook, because that's my Gmail. I'm going to share my Outlook screen with you so that you can see what I just sent out. Come on. When you want things to go fast, they don't. So I'm just trying to be patient with my Outlook here. Okay, let me slide that over here. Not sliding very fast, but come on. Here it comes. All right, so let me show you the email that I received once it catches up to me here. And you could see what that one that I just created ends up looking like. Because yes, you're going to preview it so that you can make sure you go back and make any adjustments to it that you need to. But this is what the recipient is going to see. I'm going to be patient for a second. Because every time I click, it slows it down a little bit. So let me get this. I don't know why. I think I need my internet reset or something here. I am directly wired to my network, but okay. So just a second and it will bring that in, because I want to then show you how the responses, how you collect the responses and how you're going to be able to work with those. So once again, I have a couple of things just like you saw through my Gmail, but here's the one that I just did. So here's that. This is how it's going to look if you email it directly out of the Forms app. I like this better than doing copy a link and put it in my own email. I like the looks of this. So this is exactly, so it says you're invited to take this purchase order form. Hi, would you mind taking 2 minutes to fill out this form? Because that's what it said generically, but of course I would change that. For me to do the form or to fill the form out, I just click start now. And you could even put that in your description to give them instructions on how to fill the form out. Click start now. Once you're done, click submit, that kind of a thing, just so you know you could do that. Once it opens here, sorry. Once it opens, it's going to open the form and I'll be able to fill the form out and we'd be able to, of course, answer any of those questions. My goodness, that is like snail slow, but here it comes. And I opened it. Unfortunately, I'm a clicker, so it opened it a couple of different times, but here's that first section. So it's telling me, hi, Jolynn, when you submit this form, the owner will see your name and email address. So if it's not anonymous, they know right away at the top of the form that will have their email. But I have that section for vendor, so you can see it's required for me to fill out the name of my company. So I'm going to put in ABC Company. I have to put in the date. When you click on the date, it automatically gives them a pop-up. So I'm going to say it's the 12th. And then I have my ratings for my shipping. I can say that it was good. It was better. Next is here because I put in another section. So that was the first section. They click next to go to the second section. Just so you know, that's how sections work. And I only had the one question on there. So I'm going to say today, then I'm going to submit my response. So now the response has been sent and we get live results of the form as they are being submitted. Now, before I go to the results of all of these, just so you're aware of a few other places that you can actually create and use forms. You could do it on a SharePoint site. So one of the web parts in a SharePoint site is a form. So I happen to be on this clinic SharePoint site, and one of my web parts on the right-hand side here is a form. Now, the form could have been embedded, but I usually just create the site, add it to a page as a web part, and I can create a brand new one, or I can connect to an existing one. So if you're a champion of your SharePoint or you are a designer of your SharePoint, you could do this. Otherwise, you can see that it has the questions, describe the issue you are having. So this would be a form for if somebody needs support, Outlook keeps locking up. Nope, it's not clicking up. Locking up. And then I have this, generically, I have this second question. Once I'm done, I would click submit. Back in the Forms app is where it's collecting all the results. So whoever comes into the SharePoint site, they would have access to this. Once again, we would put a timer on this if it's something that is only going to be available for however long. So if I'm going to be doing a blood drive, like I have this countdown to a blood drive, I could have a link to the form so they could register for the blood drive. Just so you know, that's something that you could use it for. You can use it for a lot of different things within an organization. So having a SharePoint site would be another way to create a form. You can also be in Microsoft Teams. So let me go into Microsoft Teams and show you how you could use a form here. When I come into Microsoft Teams, I can actually go to a team. This would be another option. I could go to a team, trying to maximize that window here. So if I go to a team, go to a channel can have a form. So up at the top here, I have a form called fill safety quiz. So let's say that we just all went through safety training and I want my team to fill out this quiz. I could have this quiz as a tab in a channel of a team. So describe how a fire extinguisher works. It puts out the fire. That's how it works. And then they would click submit. After they fill it out, they click submit and it's automatically being tracked. The responses are all being tracked in the background. So Teams would be another option you have for creating a form and using a form, because I could have just did add an app and create a brand new form or connect to an existing form. Or the other example I wanted to show you is back in Outlook. When you are in Outlook, you could create a new email and add a form, a quiz, or a poll, different things to an email. I could have a link to an existing form, but a lot of times I'm doing it with a poll. And by the way, polls are available in a lot of apps. So if I'm in a brand new email, just so you could see how you could do this, you could go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. Sorry. Let me go back to my blank email. And when you're in the typing area of your email, you can go to the Insert tab to insert a poll. It's on the left-hand side. So you'll see the poll option in several different applications. Once it opens, you give it what your questions are for the poll, and then you insert it into the email. So it's going to be a part of the email. So when they receive the email, they can click on the answer for their poll question, whatever it happens to be. So I want to ask the question, maybe I want to ask, what do you want for lunch? Just as an example, I could give them their options. And maybe I want a fancy restaurant, and maybe I want a fast food. You know, give them whatever your options are going to be. Do I want them to be able to make a multiple choice? I can click next and I can actually put in different choices, but I'm going to simply say, I'm going to add this to the email. So once I click add to email, it will automatically be available when they receive this email as well. Sorry, I have to authenticate my account because I have multiple accounts. So it will automatically be available in this email when I send the email out. So I would say something in the email about, please answer the poll that is included with this message. Haley, did someone have a question?
Hi, Jolene. Yes, we have a quick question.
Yes.
Maya is asking, can you add a form in that same way?
A link to the form.
So you would just have to copy the link from the form on the website and then just insert it there?
Correct. So we could do that copy link when we're in the form.
Mhm.
Or you could just go straight into forms and I'll show you where you can copy it from there too, and then just paste the link here. Yep.
Okay.
Otherwise, through here, it's going to be a poll by default.
And does that create it in the back end in Microsoft Forms somewhere?
Yes, it does.
All right,
Yes,
we'll wait and see.
absolutely. So anyway, just so you could see, it automatically has included this. If I send the email out, of course, they'll be able to answer that poll. So I'll just put in poll. I would put in instructions. That's kind of the etiquette side of things. Don't always assume people know how to do things. We want to give them the instructions of how to do something. So once again, we would receive an email or whatever it would be, and then we would respond to it. So let me go back into the forms though, kind of taking you back to where I kind of started with this. Let me get back to sorry. Come on. Back into the forms again. So as people are filling the forms out, we're going to be able to go back to the form and view the responses. Now, we can go back into the actual forms app and then go to whichever form it is that we want. And once again, just so you saw, here's all the different forms, and I can see how many responses I have for each form. So this emergency contact has 3 responses. If I click on it, it will take me to that form. So every time somebody fills out a form, it keeps adding the tally. We know how many people have filled it out. At the top left, I can see the responses. So this is where I could edit the questions, etc. But if I want to view the responses, I'm going to click on responses at the top left. It's going to give me a dashboard of the actual results. I love this. They have improved this since it was first released. I think this is absolutely fantastic. This one I have already analyzed in Excel. So I already have my icon at the top right to get into Excel, but just so you can see, it's got different pie charts, column charts. Look at all this. Gives you responses to every one of the questions. But I'm going to click on the Excel at the top right because I already had the Excel, but I'll show you what it looks like if you didn't start Excel yet. But it automatically grabs the current data. So the Excel is updating on, it's live. It's a live update all the time with the responses. Haley, someone have a question?
Oh,
Oops.
yes. Oh, sorry.
There you are.
Yes. Hi. It's sort of a two-part question from Tanya. So the first part is, can you change a form after you've received responses?
Yes, you can. But should you? No.
Of course.
That's kind of
I
the
guess little
etiquette
edits,
side.
maybe like spelling fixes are okay,
Spelling
but
fixes might be okay, but yeah, if you are going to be changing questions, adding new questions, send an updated form
yeah.
because you want to have separate responses because otherwise the Excel is going to be confused on what it's supposed to be collecting. Yeah, so the etiquette to that is do a new form.
Definitely.
And you can copy a form.
Yes, and you can copy. Okay, perfect. And the
Yep.
second part of the question, which we kind of answered, those new responses, it will not update the spreadsheet you have, correct? You'd have to re-download that with the new answers.
It automatically does collect those. I don't know if you noticed, but when I first opened this, it only had 3 responses, but then
Okay.
it automatically, it was a little slow on syncing, but then it added that 4th response that I just did.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that
it
I didn't know
automatically
that.
does update. So I could be in here and it refreshes and automatically will add those live updates. Okay.
Okay.
But how did
Perfect.
I even get to this Excel? Let me back up a little bit because if I'm in a form, like the purchase order form, if I'm in this form and I only have one response, but that's okay, you can still get the gist of how this is going to work for you. So when you create a new form, you send it out, you're starting to collect the responses. You're going to come back into the form. I open it from the Forms app, come back into the form, click responses at the top left. You'll get your dashboard look. But the very first time at the top right, it's going to say open results in Excel. Once you've done that, it will show the Excel file name. Okay, so I'm going to click open results in Excel just so that you can see, depending on the questions that you were asking, how are they going to be listed in Excel? Then you can do your analysis. So because I've been through a lot of training on surveys, because we used to do the paper surveys where they fill it in with the number 2 pencil and we'd scan them in with Scantron scanners and whatever. It's crazy how we don't pay enough attention to what kind of a response do we want to get to be able to analyze them correctly. Haley, I see your hand is up.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, we have a follow-up question. Sorry if that's okay.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Can we post the same form in multiple places, such as
Oh,
2 different teams, a SharePoint, an email, a link? It's all
that
the
is a
same?
wonderful question. And yes, you most likely will. So when you do that copy link, paste it wherever it is that you need it. I'm going to email it to these people because they're part of my organization, but I also am going to put it on my SharePoint site. I'm going to put it over here, whatever the case would be. So just so you know, you can do that. You can also limit so that one IP address fills out the form. So they can't respond multiple times type of a thing. Otherwise, you could do some data cleanup once it comes in. But notice what it did with this one. It has a start time, a completed time. It's giving me their email address and their name. Those were not things that I asked them to fill out. But because this was a form that I was doing just for my organization, it wasn't anonymous. It automatically gave me that information. If it's anonymous, it will not. It will not give you their name and their email address, that kind of a thing. But otherwise, I can see the information that it automatically gave me based on my questions that I had asked it. So I would now be able to create a pivot table based on this data. I could do formulas. I could do a count of how many people said better, best, whatever. But I do have that dashboard. That dashboard is already out there in the form itself that is giving you those results. But I got to tell you, I always turn these into a pivot table. I really kind of create my own dashboard on my Excel because I share this Excel with other people. I share the Excel with other people, just so you know. Now, where exactly is this stored? You can see based on my path up at the top, it's actually saved within my personal OneDrive is technically where this is saved. But I can actually make a copy of this. I could put it someplace else, or I could choose wherever I want things to end up. But I love the fact that we can collect these responses and we can interactively do something with these responses. Because if we have a lot of people that are coming back and rating things as poor, we might want to do a follow-up with the people that said poor. And I could actually filter by poor, and then I have their email addresses. I could then send a new form directly to those email addresses and ask them for a follow-up. Now, there are looping capabilities that we have built into forms as well, that a little more advanced for our session here today. But we could say if they answered this way, give them a follow-up question this way. So just so you know, there's additional things that we can be doing because forms have been expanded over the past few months. We've got some new features that we can be using. But I got to tell you, this to me is, at first when they came out, I thought, oh, they're okay. They're okay for asking simple things, but they weren't very user friendly. I love them now. I use them all the time, and I'm doing poll questions all the time. We do those in meetings. We're in a Teams meeting. We want to do a poll. Those are all polls that are being utilized directly through a form. So those are all part of a Microsoft form, just so you're aware. But I definitely use them in SharePoint. I use them in Teams all the time. But most commonly for me is emailing or putting it on a SharePoint site so that people can automatically have access to it there. But like we said, we can do it multiple places by just linking it and emailing it to people and embedding it on our website. So wherever it is that you need access to it. So if you have a brand new customer and they just received their product and you want to send them a survey to say, how did we do? We just had somebody call the support desk and we want to send them a survey to say, how did we do? Here's your choice. You could copy that link or send them to the website to fill the form out, because you could have the form be on a separate page and give them the web address to that page as a link, and they could fill it out. Lots of different choices. You really want to think ahead as to, what am I going to name it? What is the objective of the form? Who needs to receive it? What types of questions am I going to ask? Now that you've kind of seen, what are my choices for questions? We have, text, we can have multiple lines of text, we can have dates, etc. Now that you kind of seen that, you can start thinking about the types of questions you would ask. Do you need sections, etc.? How are you going to distribute? How do you want to collect those responses? Because part of those collection of the responses also is we can actually say, I want to get a copy to say they filled it out. I don't really want to do that if I'm sending this to 100 people. I don't want an email back saying, I got an email, somebody filled out a form, somebody filled out a form. I just go to the form and view the results there. Okay. Haley, did we have another question come up?
We do have one more question. We'll just save it for the end as it's a bit more lengthy. But
Okay.
if anyone else has any other questions, please pop those into the chat and we'll also tackle those. And then we'll wrap up in just a few more minutes.
Okay. Just so you know too, when I came into this purchase form and I'm on the responses, you're going to watch this. I mean, it will be updated live. So as people are filling it out, the number, of course, of responses is going to change. And I always like to come in and, I'm always monitoring these, which by the way, this is a web address. So right at the top, you could actually have your own link to get back to this quicker or save it as a favorite. That's what I usually do is I'll save it as a favorite. But anyway, just so you can see, it's got the average time it took someone to complete it. You can limit the amount of time they get to complete it. So if they're doing a quiz or whatever, you can say you only get 1 minute to fill this out or whatever your case would be, just so you know, it's very powerful. That's why I'm kind of not using Adobe Forms as much. I'm really using this a lot because it's actually easier. Adobe Forms, I can't live without those because they have other features that they can do that we can't do yet in here, but I really like this. So, and I really like, and by the way, you've got this view results. View results will take you into the individual form answers. So it takes you back to actually view each response. It's got arrows up at the top to go back and forth with the responses. I don't do that if I'm getting hundreds of them. It's very difficult to go back and individually read them all, but I do that a lot with evaluations. So if somebody is filling out an evaluation on our customer service, whatever the case would be, I do like reading those, and sometimes management wants to read them so we can share this with them. But otherwise, I really like the dashboard. The dashboard gives you an at-a-glance look of every question you asked. It's giving you a chart or a graph of some sort based on all the questions that you had. Okay. Whew. So if you haven't tried this yet, my recommendation is create one. Share it with a couple of coworkers, letting them know you're just testing how this works. That's how you're going to learn how to use them. That's the easiest way to practice before you go live with thousands of people so that you have a better, you'll feel better about understanding how it all works. Okay. So Haley, let's jump back to that question that you had.
Fantastic. Okay, so the question is, I would like to use the form to collect work order requests in a spreadsheet. Can I keep that spreadsheet wherever I want? And then a follow-up question.
It's cloud-based. It needs to be cloud-based.
Okay.
That's the only restriction, cloud-based.
Okay. They ask, can we keep it in a specific department team folder?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. I don't believe any other questions have come through yet. If you have any lingering ones, please feel free to pop those into the chat or turn on your mic and you can definitely talk with us directly.
Yes.
One new message. Oh, I do have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Can we edit the Excel sheet so we can add a note and mark an order or request as complete? Oh, so if you open that Excel sheet, can you like add a
You
new
can't,
column or anything like that?
don't add it to the table.
Okay.
I think I messed it up one time when I added it as a new column to the table because it's not a part of what's being linked from the form itself. So don't add it to the table
Okay.
because the form results is in a Microsoft Excel table. So don't add something to the table. You can add it outside of it.
Okay. I wonder
Okay.
if they will make that possible in the future because it seems like a important feature for that specific example for
Well,
request. Marking something as complete seems hopefully one day.
I don't know if they'll change that. They may, but it messed up if I was still collecting the results. But if I'm done collecting those, because we were only collecting them up until this date and now we're done collecting them, you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. But if it's a
But
continuously
if it's
open,
continuously being
yes, if you're
updated,
constantly taking
yeah,
orders, yes.
yeah.
Okay. We'll ponder on that. We'll let you know, Tanya, if we have any dolphin input on that as well. Because
Well, let me tell you one other
yeah.
alternative to that. What I would probably do is have it be linked to another sheet
Hmm.
that I could be updating.
That's great. Yep. Someone actually just recommended that you could,
Yep.
we'll split the sheet. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think you could split the sheet, but I would do a copy paste link
Mhm.
or have VBA. I would do a VBA code that says when you get a new record added, add it to this too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways that it could be done, that it could actually be going to a sheet within that same workbook, but then
Mhm.
you could have your additional columns.
Excellent. Okay.
There's workflows for everything, you know.
Exactly. Yes. I know I love forms. I use it all the time. All of our dolphin events, I'm always collecting responses, and
Nice.
I like the branching you can add there, which is
Yes.
great.
Yeah. I always
So,
call it looping because it's the code
looping.
side of me says looping.
Right.
It's called branching. Thank you.
Branching. Yes, I like the branching. Okay, fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will let
Thanks.
folks go as we're just past 12 o'clock. If you have any follow-up questions or you'd like a copy of the recording, please email us at training@smartdolphins.com. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.